Hey guys, I know I've been promising this video for a very long time, and now I actually have a practical use for it. Compounding and polishing a boat, and it's actually needed on my boat. We were out last weekend on the lake, and we were tied up with a bunch of people, and a guy snuck a jet ski in between two boats and tied up, and that jet ski banged up against my boat all afternoon. So we got quite a few little scrapes and nicks and stuff like that, but they're not terrible. They look to be superficial. So I'm going to show you how to compound and polish those scratches out. And the same applies for using for an oxidized finish. So I'll go over, and if there's anything different that I use for an oxidized finish, I'll tell you. But 9 out of 10 of these steps are going to transfer straight over to polishing a whole boat. But this, we're just going to do a small spot finish. So let me show you the tools that are involved, and then we'll get started. First things first is sandpaper. I know everybody goes, I don't want to sand on my boat, but you're going to have to get rid of the bad spots. The idea is what you're doing is you're going from a very coarse grit to a less coarse, and then to a very fine grit, and then we move into other stuff, which I'll get into in a second. Now, depending on how bad your finish is depending on how much grit you need. Now remember, the coarser the grit, the faster it's going to cut and the more it takes off. In our case, all we're going to need is to start with 1,000 and then go to a 1,500. I may even start with a 1,500 in this aspect because the scratches are not too terribly deep. But you may have to, if it's a really bad oxidized finish, you may have to go with a 600 grit to be able to get it, but you have to be very, very careful in removing it. On my Glastron, I did do 600 grit. But for the scratches, I'm actually going to start with a 1,500, see if that gets me in the right area, and if not, we may need to cut it more with 1,000 grit. It's always better to kind of start with the lesser the grit that you think and see if you get the results that you want, because if you cut too far, you can't add to it. You can always take more off. You can't add more in. So there's your sandpaper. You're also going to need water, and actually we need lots more than this, but you want a little bit of soap in there also to provide some lubricant so whenever you're sanding the finish. So therefore, what you do is you just put a couple drops of Joy or baby soap or whatever you want in there, and then just keep your sandpaper wet. So next things are polisher. The polishers and polish pads. Polisher is not a grinder. This is an adjustable variable RPM polisher, which I think the max is like 3,000 RPMs. It should go very, very slow because that's just letting the polish do the work and the pad do the work. You're not want to just burn the finish, because if it goes too fast, it's gonna absolutely ruin your coat, especially if you're doing a car. So, and then you have two different pads. Now this one looks kind of bluish gray right now, but that is the color it used to be. It's called a white pad, and it actually cuts a little more. So it's like going to 2,000 or 2,500 grit sandpaper with the use of some polish, which I'll show you here. And then there's a fine cut pad, and you can feel the difference in the two. This one's it's called the gray pad. It's very, very smooth and very, very soft. This one's kind of coarse, and you can tell the difference if you get lost or forget what you're doing. The next thing is our polishes. Now, there's many different kind of polishes out there. This is just what I use. This is from a body shop. It's called Clean Cut. You can use Meguiar's. I think it's number 3 or something like that. It has actually got some grit to it to be able to cut, and it basically takes it to like a 3,000 grit sandpaper, or I'm sorry, 2,500 grit sandpaper. So once again, we're going in our progression, finer and finer, all the way up to that. And then of course you've got your final, which is a base coat, clear coat polish. It is basically puts the polymer over the top. You can use this on, it doesn't have to be base coat, clear coat. I use this on everything, but that's when we use this one. And I'll go over this in more detail when we're actually working, but these are our basic tools when you're doing a polish job. And then the next thing you need is time. Now with mine, it's not going to be too terribly bad just because we've got a few scratches to work on, but if you're doing a whole boat, it took me 3 full days to do my Glastron, so you need to block off enough time and be patient. So I'm going to go out there and show you the damage to the boat, and we'll go from there. Okay, so you can see here, we've got abrasions up here all over the place, and they're basically just abrasions is all they are, but I can feel them. But you see how the color comes off on my finger? That means that this is repairable. It doesn't go all the way through to white or anything like that. That means we can actually sand some of this off, but I've got it all the way down to here when this jet ski was hitting me. There's one right there. They're mostly up in this area right here. So what we're going to do first is I'm going to set this on a tripod, and I'm going to actually start wet sanding first and show you exactly how this works. We're going to use the 1,500 grit because I think that's what we're going to be able to get away with. All right, so what we're starting with now, I'm just getting the area wet. And I'm just doing some light sanding on the scratch areas. That's all I'm doing. I'm barely providing any pressure whatsoever. Make sure you keep what you're trying to do with the sandpaper is to feather out any scratch or abrasion. The same thing goes for oxidation. Now the difference in if you're doing a whole boat is what you want to do is you'll use actually a small flat edge to be able to get it level. But in this application, this is all we're doing is just a little bit where the scratches were. Using your fingers is perfectly fine. All right, what we're noticing is that I have a couple of scratches that are fairly deep here. I can actually catch them with my fingernail. Everything else came out pretty good, but this one did not. I'm going to switch to 1000 grit. See if we can get a little deeper cut. And they're right in here. I can feel them.
This was 1000 grit.
Yep. Notice I didn't go very long.
Almost gone.
They're almost gone. You want to be very careful around corners. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that all the way out without sanding through. So now that I did the 1500, I need to go back with 1000 to smooth it out a teensy bit. I'm sorry, now that I did the 1000, I need to go back with a lighter grit 1500 to smooth out some of those sand scratches. So it's easier for me to use my rotary polisher. And those, I can still see a teensy bit, but they will go away with polishing. And I'm just looking all over for any more abrasions that I missed. These will polish out nice. And then what it should look like is dull. You see there's no shine to it, and it should just be as smooth as a baby's butt. So now we're on to the polishing phase. All right, so once again, I'm using my white pad or yellow pad. And this has a little bit of polish on it. So what I did is I did a bit of wetting just to kind of get it. You want some little bit of wetness on it. And then all we're going to do is put it on the edge. Keep going. Just a teensy bit. There you go. You see just a little bit there. And we gotta plug it in first. And then don't just grab the trigger and go. What you want to do is spread this polish around your area. And when you pull this trigger, it is going to sling it if you're not careful. Okay, so that brought back the gloss quite a bit, but I also see where I need to do some more work. This is a multi-stage process because this did gouge a little bit. I can still feel them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a little more time going over this with sandpaper, and then I'll show you my results when it's all said and done. Okay, so I've hit all of these a lot more to level them out. It's pretty much what you're doing is you're taking a scratch out of this thing as you're taking the gouge and you're trying to level the paint with the rest of it. So now we're ready to keep on going with our compound a couple more times. And all I'm doing is just a teensy bit. Now what I'm noticing is I'm still seeing my sand scratches because what I did is I finished with 1000 grit and I should have taken it up to 1500. So yeah, I still see my sand scratches in the coat, and it's being very picky, but it's super easy to fix. Just grab hold your 1500 and just give it a nice wiping once again over it with the 1500 with light pressure and lots of water, because you're going to a finer grit and you're trying to equalize the sand scratch action. It's almost like you're rubbing this thing with notebook paper. Okay. You can see why this takes so long. And my knees are killing me. Okay, so now we're going to take our green stuff all over again. Just like a baby's butt. I don't see any sand scratches. Now, I can still tell where the nicks were a teensy bit because you couldn't take it down. There's some deeper gouges, but they don't stand out like a sore thumb like they did before. You got to kind of cut your losses sometimes. If I kept going and got every bit of the nick out, I might have sanded through the gel coat. So you got to be very careful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish with this stage, and I'll be back in a minute. Now we're ready for the final amount. So this is my Auto Magic, and this is a very fine polish. That's all it is. And then I'm going to use my gray pad here, and just do a teensy bit. Don't forget to wet your pad too, because you want the pad just a slight bit damp, because that actually helps the polish and cutting action. Now look at it. That is like a piece of glass. That's the difference you should see. You don't see any more of those cuts or scratches. Actually looks better than down here, but I'm not about to do the whole thing. And it's just as smooth. You can see it's just like a mirror, because what you've done is you've leveled it out. So this can also apply as if you re-gel coat your boat. It's gonna actually have orange peel and stuff like that, and fish eyes. You have to sand it all out. So you have to do that whole thing, what I just did on the with the polisher. But you can see how it just is like a mirror when you get it all said and done. And my scratches, very difficult to see. And when you're at a distance, they don't stand out anymore. They don't have that light colored chafing. So there's how you do it, guys. Now you get to clean up everything. All the spatter and everything, it's all over my truck. And then enjoy it. It takes a lot of work to keep the boat up like this though.